Imagine there's something already in your body, right in your gut, that in animal studies have shown to speed up recovery, support the gut lining, and even shown some forms of nootropic and brain gut effects. It's called BPC-157. And today I'm going to be giving you a real deep dive on its mechanisms, the studies we have so far, dosing, and controversies like things like cancer. Hey guys, Dr. Michael Moeller here. Welcome back. Or if you're new to the channel, here we chase health, wealth, and wisdom. And if you like deep research with practical takeaways, hit that subscribe button and you can go down to some of my links to see how we can work together. Let's dive in. Oh, quick disclaimer, BPC is not FDA approved. There's very limited human data, and this is educational purposes only, not medical advice. Also, if you're in sports, this is a banned substance, so heads up. So what is BPC-157? It stands for Body Protecting Compound 157, and it's a 15-chain amino acid peptide, and it has been discussed as being stable inside of our gastric juices. And one of its main mechanisms is tissue protection in the gut and regeneration. So let's break this down into four major areas, BPC, and how most people think about it. Number one is going to be its connection to gut inflammation. Many of the claims with BPC-157 are for things like Crohn's and colitis, helping with leaky gut and reducing flare-ups that people have in situations like IBS. And that's why it seems to support the mucosal integrity, it lowers inflammation, and in most of the preclinical work, it's mostly for immunomodulation and for gut issues. More and more, though, this is being discussed as number two, an area used for injury and regeneration. Most claims you're going to hear are a faster recovery. It even helps with pain, better ligament and tendon healing, especially for old stubborn issues like a shoulder that's taken years to repair. That's why BPC is being discussed as influencing repair pathways, blood flow, collagen organization, growth factor sensitivity, and some people speculate it may even help response with recovery signals like growth hormone. Third major area people are really discussing BPC-157 benefits is with the gut-brain axis, and then in turn we get some forms of benefits for mood, sleep, and inflammation. So most of the claims you're going to hear from people who've tried BPC or what's being discussed in the research are things like less anxiety, deeper sleep, and overall a more calm brain. And this is usually why it's framed through the gut-brain axis. If gut inflammation is, due to the permeability of the gut, so helping heal a leaky gut, you're going to have less systemic inflammation, you're going to have less brain fog, and overall, you're probably going to have a better serotonin, dopamine sensitivity. Now, with that being said, some people do get anhedonia, which is the lack of overall sense or feeling. It's not really depression. It's just things like maybe you grab a cup of coffee and then you don't notice usually that dopamine or serotonin kick. And this isn't a small set of people, but it is something that anecdotally people are talking about. And again, this is probably because it has some form of modulating serotonin. And then number four is going to be BPC's apparent benefits as far as nitric oxide, which is the ability to open up blood vessels, and angiogenesis, the process by which you actually create new blood vessels. So the claim you're going to hear then is going to be, better circulation, faster wound healing, and overall everything is just going to recover quicker. And that is why more blood flow, more oxygen, more nutrients, immune traffic is cleared better. Now, with that also being said, this is why people get a little more skeptical when it comes to the big C word, cancer. It's like, is this going to increase your chances of cancer? We don't really know. So now that I've highlighted the four main areas, gut repair, injury repair for musculoskeletal, gut issues, and then serotonin, dopamine, so neurotransmitters, let's break down the mechanisms in a different way. Number one, let's chat about gut lining protection. Now, the gut lining is one of the fastest renewing tissues in our body. It's constantly turning over, and every few days, because it's the frontline barrier between you and the outside world, in animal models, BPC-157 is discussed as supporting that barrier, helping the mucosa tight junctions, the integrity, so fewer irritants. The way I usually chat about this is imagine you have a castle wall, and that's your gut lining. Now, when the wall gets broken, you have all these invaders come in, and then your troops will go in and attack, and that's just going to cause problems for your your soldiers, but also just you're destroying the wall. And then these invaders come in, and then everyone kind of goes crazy. So keeping that gut lining and healing that gut lining is what keeps your immune system down. And that's why we're seeing lots of benefits with things like Crohn's, colitis, and leaky gut or IBS in general, because you're keeping that inflammation down and you're keeping out the things that once they get in are causing major issues. Now, mechanism 2 I really want to highlight is the nitric oxide angiogenesis. So in our preclinical research, BPC-157 gets linked to nitric oxide related pathways, which is pro-healing and vascular benefits. This is basically supporting the body's ability to deliver oxygen, nutrients, repair cells, damaged tissues. And this is going to overlap with the nitric oxide with angiogenesis style signaling, which is why people will claim that they have faster tendon, ligament, and recovery. You get better perfusion, so you get better repair signaling, and more blood flow is just going to decrease the time that it takes for that area to regenerate. Now let's look at the brain-gut axis neurotransmitter kind of overlap, right? We've got the brain-gut axis, and a lot of online claims are going to revolve around mood, sleep, calming inflammation, which we chatted about with the just healing of the gut lining. And if the gut barrier improves and systemic inflammation can drop, then this can also change how our brain feels and functions. You're going to have a decrease in your brain fog, right? You can also have a leaky brain. And if you have a leaky brain and a leaky gut, these proteins are going to get all the way up around your brain and cause all kinds of things like fatigue and mood disturbances. And so a lot of these animal studies actually show a better serotonin dopamine decrease in neural inflammation, which is interesting, but it's not the same proof as in humans, but there's probably going to be some correlation there. Now let's actually jump into what areas that we have some research on. One is going to be with gut and colitis and Crohn's, and this is historically where the research started with rats and mice. So we do have a lot of research on rats and mice in this area, but again, this doesn't necessarily correlate over to the human trials, but this is what has then encouraged people to research it for Crohn's and colitis. Now, first, I want to chat about some other areas, things like there is one, intra-articular, meaning that they injected it straight into the joint space in knee pain. And this is one of the more cited studies in humans. And most of the patients did actually say that they felt better. They had an improvement in their pain and in their mobility. Now, in this study, they used milligrams and not micrograms, which we'll chat about later about the actual dosing. But overall, there did seem to be some benefit when talking about the knee pain and intra-articular injections. Another area that I found very interesting is for interstitial cystitis. This is an inflammatory condition of the bladder where we don't really know why, but the bladder is inflamed, so people have chronic symptoms like they have a UTI. This is common in women with autoimmune, and there's not a whole lot that you can do about it. But what's interesting, though, is this one study of 12 women, and 10 of the women, they actually used 10 milligrams and they injected it into the bladder. And 10 of the 12 women reported strong symptom improvement and no adverse side effects. So while this is just a small study, it's super promising. And again, this makes sense. We chatted about earlier how, BPC-157 helps heal the mucosal layer in the gut. Then, your bladder, the tissue is different, but it could also have that benefit of healing that lining inside of the bladder that is usually what's inflamed and it's causing the inflammation. So it's going to cause burning while urinating and other very uncomfortable symptoms. Now, and then another study, it's on 2 people, but it was actually IV. And when you're doing things via IV, it's much more dangerous, right? If I take something orally, it's got to go to my gut first to be number 1, absorb, but then 2, it's going to go to your liver before it goes all over your body. If you inject it subcutaneously, it's got to leak into your blood vessels, so it's not dumping it all at once. So something like epinephrine, you do 10 times as less if you are injecting something straight into your blood vessel versus doing a subcutaneous because it's 10 times as potent. Now, with that being said, they did an IV, it's just only done on 2 people, but they did 10 at one point and then 20 milligrams via IV and showed little to no side effects. So when you're talking about someone doing 500 micrograms orally versus doing 20 milligrams via IV, that 500 micrograms orally is much, much lower. And if it's safe at 20 milligrams IV, then you should have a decent amount of confidence that doing even 20 milligrams orally is probably safe. Now, again, that was one study on 2 people, so we do need more data. Now, and then back to the colitis and Crohn's situation. There is one paper on colitis. I've seen another one on colitis for enemas that's not published or finished. And I've not really been able to find anything on Crohn's. Everything in those studies does show, though, that these are both safe and tolerable with mostly upside. Now, let's jump into the controversy of oral versus injectable. Intuitively, oral makes a lot of sense because BPC is already occurring in the gut naturally. So if you want to talk about safety, it's like, okay, it's just going to the place that it already is at. And there does seem to be in some animal models proof that it is stable in gastric juices. Some people will say, for peptides in general, you have hydrochloric acid in the stomach and it breaks down a lot of them. Some can survive, but that doesn't automatically prove that it is meaningfully absorbed in humans. And then what we'll see in the research is that people are being pushed and think that the subcutaneous route is the way that is superior. Now, I haven't been able to find a paper on. Again, if there's a paper on it, please link it below. Makes sense to me that if you're injecting it subcutaneous, you'll have better absorption than it being oral, but this is still anecdotal. And some people will even go as far as to say, okay, if you're wanting to heal a shoulder injury from a research purpose, it would make more sense to inject in the shoulder. Now, again, no evidence. If I had to make an argument, it's kind of the Pascal wagers, meaning like, I do think it's possible. It's kind of like if you're dumping oil in the northwest side of the pond, the southeast side of the pond, there's going to be a lower concentration of that oil. So it does make sense to me that if you injected it subcutaneous, that there's a chance that it can be more localized, as far as pain, maybe angiogenesis in that area. It's not been proven, though, at this point. And ultimately, if it's just going to get into your blood, if it's just going to seep into your blood and go systemic, it's probably going to have, systemic benefits. So you can inject subcutaneously or maybe even the area of the injury. I just don't see an argument for why wouldn't I just inject in the injury site, knowing that there's possible upside with very little downside. Now, in my opinion, if I was conducting research and people were having areas, I think it would be much safer to start with an oral. Let's just say that someone is wanting to do a study on a shoulder injury. Taking it orally could probably have the benefits we already chatted about. Increases sensitivity to growth hormone. It's going to help with improving the gut lining. That will decrease inflammation. And it's overall probably safer. Anytime you're injecting, you have to source it right. You can get infections because you're poking the skin. So in my opinion, I would always want to start with oral before moving to injectable. And if you got the benefits from using the oral, why do the injectable? Now, moving into dosing, how much are people suspecting will be a benefit? Because we said, 10, 20 milligrams of IV, and then we've heard of a couple micrograms. So I think conservatively, areas that will start as far as the research would be something like 250 micrograms to 500 micrograms, and that could be done up to twice daily, both oral or subcutaneously. Now, in my opinion, I think using any form of therapy, it's not a bad idea. If you want to go for 4 to 6 weeks and use it, not a bad idea. But then probably also not a bad idea to come off. It's like using caffeine or any type of stimuli. If it's not necessary, let the receptors reset and increase their sensitivity. So it makes sense to me if I were conducting a study, you would do something like maybe 6 straight weeks. Or if we wanted to go for months of a long period of time, I would do something like 5 days on or 2 days off. But that's just me speculating at this point. And then getting into side effects and dangers, at this point, we've really not had a whole lot of side effects or contraindications reported. In the studies that I chatted about, all of them were very well tolerated without any side effects to report. Now, I think one of the major issues that people are most concerned about is going to be cancer, because BPC, we've chatted about its ability to increase blood flow, and not only increase blood flow, but create new blood vessels, which in theory could be a double-edged sword to, quote unquote, being cancer. I'm not really in this camp of thinking because exercise does that, tadalafil does that, nitric oxide, beetroot, all these things do that. And I would argue that in an optimal state of low inflammation, you're living a healthy lifestyle, more blood flow is going to be better. If your health is a complete dumpster fire and you're just throwing on tons of inflammation, you're not sleeping, then yeah, giving blood flow to an area Too much blood flow actually can increase inflammation. So I would be very skeptical, especially if you maybe had cancer, then yes, doing this, or you've had a history of cancer, then probably would want to stay away. Now, the FDA hasn't really, ruled on this at right now. They're skeptical. This is not FDA approved. And it's actually in category 2, basically saying, we don't know. We're not willing to stick our neck out and say that it's safe. So they would encourage everyone to stay away from these unless that you're able to, get into a research study. Now, besides cancer, if you're having, maybe you're having a mass that could be a cancer, you probably want to stay away. Pregnancy and breastfeeding, you're always staying away from things that we don't know about. If you have a history of vasovagal reactions, high immune sensitivity, severe allergic reactions to injectables, I'd probably keep you away from a study. There's people out there who are using this for research purposes only. Like, I'm not going to tell you to go do that as a doctor. And then last but not least, I do kind of want to just give a general idea of how I think about these compared to some other popular peptides. I think about BPC more of, gut-brain axis, mood. And if you're having a long-term injury, that's how I think about its benefits, where something like a TB4, TB500, I think more for it's immunomodulating, and it's something more for an immediate response that you need that immunomodulation as far as inflammation and recruiting growth factors for an area to regenerate. And then something like a GHKCU, I think more about collagen synthesis. Now, TB and BPC will help in that, but GHKCU is really going to be increasing collagen synthesis, so skin, hair, tendons, and ligaments. And then KPV is another one, right? I think, again, more immunomodulation and inflammation for that. So kind of comparing and contrasting these 4. And with BPC, it seems to be a backbone to a lot of these kind of stacks. If you have BPC and you add TB500, people will call that the Wolverine stack. If you have TB, BPC, and GHKCU, people call that the Glow stack. And then if you have BPC, TB, GHKCU, and then KPV, they call that the Clo stack. So I hope you found the information today helpful. If I missed some research or you have some research that you would like to report, I'd love to hear it. Please leave your comments below. So until next time, stay vigilant, my friends, and God bless.